Well, many of us think back to the issues of gender diversity in engineering brought to the forefront nearly 30 years ago after the attack on female engineering students in Montreal. McMaster students are at the forefront of a new effort to change attitudes around diversity and inclusiveness in the field. Vanessa Raponi is founder and president of NGQueers, a not-for-profit LGBTQ advocacy group she founded 2 years ago. And with her is the current president of the McMaster chapter, Rama Arafa. Welcome to both of you. Welcome to City Matters.
Thank you very much for having us.
Let's talk about this issue. My wife is an engineer and was one of the first in metallurgy to come out of U of T and actually work in the steel mills. So I'm very proud of that fact. But what we're talking about now, we're talking about inclusiveness. It's not just about women, it's about a slew of categories of women, and I dare say some men who are also afraid necessarily to be in public with the gender they want to be perceived as. But where does the spark for this idea come from? It's several years ago, and I think you had the spark.
Yeah, so 2 years ago was when we founded the national chapter, but the McMaster chapter started about 5 years ago. And essentially what happened was myself and a handful of other engineering representatives from McMaster had gone to the Toronto Pride Parade, which that year, so we just attended the Toronto Pride Parade in our red suits and we're really excited to be there. And U of T, Waterloo, and a couple other schools had 50 people each of engineers marching in the parade. And we realized that there was this kind of unique space where engineering is very unique in itself within the university sphere and the profession, and they were having this representation at this parade. So myself being a queer student and a handful of other folks that year, we decided that to look into this idea of starting a new club, because at the time the McMaster Engineering Society was very vocally accepting of queer students and would comment like, oh, we really welcomely support LGBTQ students, but they didn't have the services or events to match that spirit. So we started the club, and it's basically, the club has three main focuses of social connection, education and advocacy, and professional development. So we host a bunch of different events and services to help bring the community together and help students feel more comfortable and leaders feel better equipped to handle these different forms of diversity.
And it's refreshing, I think, from the straight community and the awareness of what is going on, that 5 years ago, other universities had already recognized. And I think that's refreshing. And then the fact that you guys have basically piled right on and done it in a big way by going national says a whole bunch. How important is it for this inclusiveness? Because we're talking, like I said, a slew of categories, and folks who 10 years ago may not have come out and said who they were or wanted to be are now doing so with a great deal of freedom, although there are still barriers. But go back to that refreshingness and the importance of what you're putting out there for people.
I mean, I think it's extremely important for everyone to be able to feel as though they can be who they are at school and in the workplace. And through movements such as the NGQueers at McMaster and in Canada, people are able to feel as though they have a community to go to, and they can feel accepted, and they can just be who they are, and they don't have to hide, which just makes them feel comfortable in their workplace and in their community. Yeah.
We had an interesting interview last week, again from an engineer who's worked in the electrical field for 35 years. And she would be coming into a male-dominated workplace 35 years ago. But you said something interesting. It's not just about getting more women as engineers. It's bigger than that. Can you explain that?
So
because I still think there's a battle going on out there where, again, this engineer is mentoring and wanting young women to take a look at science and maths and engineering and start to transform the workplace.
Well, I do think it is critical that we do have more women in engineering, and I am a strong advocate of that as well. EngiQueers kind of has a philosophy about diversity and inclusion as a holistic concept, and we talk a lot about something called intersectionality, which is the intersection of multiple identities. So even if you're a woman, you could also be a queer woman, or a woman of color, or a woman with a mental or physical disability.
Or all of the above.
Or all of the above, exactly.
Exactly.
So it's too simplistic to just talk about women in engineering, and to the point where it's almost a detriment to only speak of diversity in this one way, because you aren't, if your true goal is diversity and inclusion and not just a number or a statistic, but you really want people to feel welcome and included to be themselves, you need to be expansive in that definition. So we do work with a lot of different women in engineering groups to collaborate and to really ensure that we're aligning all of our diversity goals and just generally helping to create a more comfortable space for any person in engineering to confidently do their work.
Now, I wrote this word down, and maybe it's just how this story was written. With 31 chapters of NGQueers in 9 provinces, the not-for-profit advocacy group calls for the inclusion of LGBTQ plus students in engineering schools across Canada. And some people listening to that might go, are you calling for a quota? Or is this just, it's wide open, let it be?
Yeah, we're definitely...
What will be, shall be, whatever, that kind of thing. Or truly is, because I think some people would,
Yeah, no,
quota?
We're definitely not speaking about a quota.
Perfect.
It's more the, you can kind of, so speaking from experience of the last 5 years, 5 years ago in our community, it was known that there were queer people around, but almost everyone was very closeted and hidden and wouldn't bring their partners to events, and it was a lot more secretive. Whereas with EQ existing, as Rama mentioned, we're creating that community and that awareness of this culture so that more people are able to be open and vocal about their support for this community. And when they're more themselves and more comfortable bringing who they are to the table, their ideas are better, they are more comfortable in their skin and interacting with their colleagues. And you see that in the workforce as well. So we're by no means saying you need 30% of your employees to be openly queer. That's not what we're saying. We're more saying it is valuable to create a community that in the event anyone is queer, they are comfortable being openly themselves.
So 4 years ago, basically, Mac gets into it. 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, national. So a student coming forward on the McMaster campus now, what kind of supports does NGQueers have available to students who come forward?
So a major part of what we do is events. So we have events such as monthly events called Munch and Mingles, where people can come and get together, whether they are queer or they're just allies, and they can come together and have a good time in a safe space where they feel accepted. We just play games, have food, that kind of thing. That's just part of creating a safe and accepting space for people who do identify as queer to feel as though they're surrounded by people who also identify in a similar way as them, and that to help them understand that they are supported and that they do have allies. And we also do things such as marching in the Toronto Pride Parade every year just to show off our pride and just to have fun, pretty much.
Who are some of the other allies on campus?
There's a lot of other groups such as Women in Engineering, the National Society of Black Engineers, and there's also other queer groups on campus such as the QSCC, which is a McMaster-based group. It's a McMaster Student Union club. Mostly just other minority groups, but also we're supported by groups that aren't necessarily minorities. So our club is part of the McMaster Engineering Society, and we just look to be inclusive with all other clubs.
You're graduating soon.
I am. I get my iron ring in 4 days, actually.
Yeah, that.
This one, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that around the house for 39 years. Yes, and you're an engineering developer for Spin Master, and they're a toy company based out of Toronto. What do you do? Imagine. And
yeah, so I actually started that job in July.
Yeah.
They're a toy manufacturing company, and I'm doing an engineering and business rotational program with them. So product development as well as supply chain and logistics. Really
and
exciting.
Rama, what continues for you?
So I'm currently in my 3rd year of chemical engineering and society. In the future, I'm looking to go into bioengineering field, biomedical engineering, so maybe pharmaceutical industry or research and development type of job.
You're getting into them at the right time, because you just saw a major development at McMaster's Innovation Park in pharmaceuticals and research and exploration, and this city is becoming renowned
hub,
for
yeah.
it. It is a hub. Great meeting both of you.
Thank you
for
us.
coming in and discussing this very important subject.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. We'll see you again on City Matters, I'll bet. After the break, how St. Joseph's Healthcare is incorporating the benefits of massage therapy in treating mental health issues.
In Canada, more than 13 million volunteers